Welcome on into the KSL Sports Front Page, brought to you by University Federal Credit Union. This show takes place every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday right here on KSL Sports Facebook, YouTube, and also Twitter. By the way, we got it now firing up on the Periscope feed as well. And we're talking a lot of news today in the world of sports. The NBA is boycotting a trio of playoff games. Today, that's going to be the lead story. We'll also get to some college football news as some scheduling news is just breaking, hitting the news wire in regards to BYU. We'll be discussing that as well. We'll start things off. Mitch Harper, Matt Baiamonte, your host of Cougar Sports Saturday. Matt, happy to be on board with you today. Big historic day, really, in the NBA, which we've seen a lot of history take place in the sports world in 2020. But today, the NBA players have boycotted the trio of playoff games, starting with the Milwaukee Bucks on the heels of the shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin this past Sunday. Jacob Blake was shot 7 times by police officers, and that scene in Kenosha, Wisconsin has led to the NBA protesting and boycotting these games tonight.
Crazy developments in the NBA. Looking back, Mitch, I shouldn't be as surprised as I am, especially after the comments that George Hill made in his last post-game interview where he just said, "What? I don't even know. I think I made a mistake coming here. I don't know why I'm here." So I have mixed feelings on this. On one hand, I absolutely respect the Milwaukee Bucks and all these teams that made this decision because they believe this is going to affect change. They believe this is the right thing to do. And whenever you do something that is maybe contrary to popular belief, but you believe it's the right thing to do, hats off to you. That it's not easy to do these kind of things. And so I really respect that. At the same time, I want change as well. And I want the right kind of change. And I just hope that, because at the end of the day, I think majority of Americans, Mitch, no one likes these stories. I think the majority of us were sick and tired of this. We don't want to see this anymore. How can we affect change? And one thing that really stuck out to me from a couple months ago was this quote from former President Barack Obama in an article he wrote titled "How to Make This Moment the Turning Point for Real Change." And there's a line in there, and ultimately I hope what the NBA is doing now and the players and the teams lead to this. President Obama says, "Elected officials who matter most in reforming police departments and the criminal justice system work at the state and local levels." And at the end of the day, I just hope that this brings awareness to all Americans that you got to be active at the polls. And it's not just voting for a future president in a couple months, but it's at the local levels too. And that's what we can do in a democracy is vote, vote, vote. And hopefully this leads to that. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I kind of feel like we may have seen our last NBA game for 2020, Mitch.
That's what I was going to get to you next, Matt. Again, if you're just joining us, it's the KSL Sports Front Page. The NBA is boycotted tonight's 3 playoff games between the Milwaukee Bucks and the Orlando Magic, the Houston Rockets and the Oklahoma City Thunder, and the LA Lakers and the Portland Trailblazers. A lot of NBA players have turned to social media, Matt, and expressed their voices on what's been taking place with the shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And it makes you wonder, Matt, did we see the last NBA game? Because the players are going to be meeting tonight, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, according to reports from Zach Lowe of ESPN.com. So what's going to happen next with the NBA? I feel like I'm kind of with you that the NBA might be hanging by a thread here if they don't take the necessary measures to make players feel like social justice is happening amid this bubble environment that they're currently in.
And you see there the tweet from Donovan Mitchell, "We demand change." As I kind of just mentioned, Mitch, I think the easiest thing, it's not the only thing, but the easiest thing is we need more people voting. We need people voting for things to make an impact. And so I hope that these games have been boycotted and that it picks back up and the narrative can continue, because there's been a lot of post-game interviews where there's, the message is still being brought forth and it's being kept alive. I'm not entirely sure how you keep the message alive if you're not playing the games. I mean, you can, of course, tweet about these things and stay politically active, but I think having the NBA platform helps keep the message alive. But I don't know. I really feel for these players, and I mean, you feel for Jacob Blake, obviously, because he's the one who, suffered this horrible incident. And they don't. I don't think the NBA players know what they can do, and I sympathize with that. When you feel helpless, what can you do? But at the end of the day, there does need to be change, and how that comes about, I don't think I have the answer.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what comes from the players meeting tonight down in the bubble, as to maybe a clear vision of what they want as far as their in game with this, because it'll be interesting to see which team maybe decides to actually take the court again first. The Jazz are scheduled to play the Denver Nuggets tomorrow night in Game 6, but I mean, I think anything, assuming that the games are going to be played tomorrow, I don't know if any team's going to be, really excited about taking the court, maybe being that first team back on the court in this climate. Maybe everyone sits it out during this time and then maybe reevaluates, because the NBA did issue in their press release today that the Game 5s had been boycotted by the 6 teams this afternoon are planning to be rescheduled. I'm just curious to see what the players decide this evening as to what the next steps are, because I think this is ultimately a players' league. And you've heard messaging from players like Kevin Love that no league is more unified than the NBA, and the NBA has definitely been at the forefront in terms of promoting social initiatives and social injustices that have taken place in society more so than other sports. So it really will be very interesting to see when the bubble, if it does resume, what's maybe the end game for the players in all of this, because a guy like Kyrie Irving expressed reservations about the players going into the bubble back in June on the heels of George Floyd. He's like, there's too much social injustices taking place. We shouldn't be going into the bubble to just give entertainment to people that maybe are not for that are against their racist or whatever term he wanted to use. He expressed concerns back then. So kind of maybe identifying what the end game is going forward for the players might be determined tonight.
Yeah, and I'd like to kind of see what that is, because boycotting games, it brings momentary awareness, but you don't want this to just be, they boycotted games and then the message kind of disappears. You want this to continue into action. And I think the action that, we can all take is being more politically engaged at the local and national level, but that's just one of many things that need to be done. And I got to imagine with guys like Chris Paul, LeBron James being in the bubble and being, as active, and some of the key leaders in the NBA, that they're going to have some, I don't want to say, and the whole NBA has say, but I think there's going to be really positive dialogue on that end game when you have that type of leadership in the bubble.
Yeah. I mean, guys like LeBron James ultimately move the needle on what they're going to think and how the next steps are going forward. And I don't think many in the NBA Players Association, you mentioned Chris Paul, who's the leader of that association. I think they're not going to go astray from how those guys feel about what the next steps are for the NBA, because to this point, Matt, the bubble has been a glowing success for the NBA. There's been 0 positive tests in the last month and a half. I mean, it feels like since they entered that thing, there's been no positive tests. It's truly been a bubble amid this COVID-19 pandemic. The quality of play has been off the charts. We're seeing historic performances from Donovan Mitchell, Jamal Murray. I know Jazz fans don't want to see that, but I mean, just the quality of play has been elite. This was the one thing that maybe that you kind of wondered could be a hurdle for the NBA as far as maybe postponing things, because this social injustices has been, there was a lot of players concerned about going in to begin with. There was many guys like Dwight Howard that were unsure about going into this bubble, but once everyone got on board, they saw the quality of play. I think everyone was engaged, and it was starting to truly feel like a typical NBA playoff, minus the home and away venues. But yeah, we'll see what goes on next. Tonight's going to tell us a lot, I think, of maybe the direction of the NBA bubble and if this does continue. But I really do think, Matt, that this is kind of teetering on the edge a little bit as maybe the season potentially being over completely. We'll have you completely covered here on KSLSports.com with all the latest regarding the NBA playoffs, the NBA bubble, and, of course, the Utah Jazz with our Jazz insider, Ben Anderson. Going to shift gears, though, to BYU football news. I teased it in the opening, Matt. Came down right when we hit the live button on this live stream here, KSL Sports Front Page, brought to you by University Federal Credit Union. BYU makes it official on a pair of football games for the 2020 schedule. So now, Matt, the Cougars have 8 games on the 2020 schedule. They're going to host UTSA, the Texas San Antonio Roadrunners on October 10th, and then the Texas State Bobcats on October 24th. Your initial thoughts on BYU making these reported games that we've known about for some time?
Yeah.
Official.
Mixed feelings. I think the overarching feeling, Mitch, and I'm sure you agree with me, any games played, in the words of Matt Bushman from a couple weeks ago, it's a bonus. This is fantastic. There's more official games on the calendar, which is great. At the same time, the home schedule is tough. And so you look at some of those games, if there's fans allowed, what would you pay to go to that game? I can't answer that question. I mean, I can answer for myself as a fan. I can't answer the question for Cougar fans as a whole. But so at the end of the positive news, it's great news. But in terms of attending that game, that's tough. I don't. You got the pandemic and then the cost. Is that a game that you would be willing to go to? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough sell for, I think, any just general public BYU fan to have much interest to maybe go. I think the one element is that it's historic. Like, hey, you're one of only 5,000-10,000 people, and in this era of people posting things on social media and posting things for a status, for a like, maybe there's an appeal to that regard where someone's going to say, I want to be part of the 5,000 people that said they were in LaVell Edwards Stadium for this game against Houston or UTSA, whatever it may be. So in that sense, it might have some appeal. But yeah, I mean, the name factor, I'm telling people outside from us who are college football junkies, you got to go into the fast facts about these teams. Like the UTSA Roadrunners, they are actually a D1 football team. Like, because really no one knows who these teams are. That if you don't follow college football, you don't know about these programs. But hey, BYU's putting together a schedule, and you got to commend Tom Holmoe for going from basically rock bottom to losing everything except 2 games and building this thing back up. And Matt, BYU now staying with the scheduling. There was an official announcement today that BYU and Navy, we know about that game. It's going to be on Labor Day night, but some big time on-air talent's going to be broadcasting that game. Kirk Herbstreit and Reese Davis from ESPN, which again highlights the unique opportunity and window that BYU has as the only team west of Texas to be playing college football this fall. They're going to have some great exposure in terms of television, not the pandemic. They don't want to have this. They're going to have
limited exposure on that front.
They're going to have great television exposure opportunities, and that's something that means a lot to BYU.
This announcement, when the game was announced, it was incredibly exciting because Navy's such a well-respected program. Then you had the coaching ties between Kalani and Ken Numiatalolo. Man, that I'm going to get that. Yeah, I'll get that. Say that 10 times fast. It's tricky, but you got that tie. And then playing on ESPN on Monday night was huge. But then you just add this element to it. I mean, it's confirmed now that this is the marquee moment of the opening week of college football. When you put Kirk Herbstreit on that game, that is the marquee moment. And to have Reese Davis, who I think if you don't follow college football as closely as you and I do, he did a great job on Thursday Night Football for a long time. He was on the call for when BYU inexplicably lost at Boise State, and there was the goal line stand there. That was Reese Davis. I mean, he had a great call. And so that's going to be fantastic, top-notch production. That's going to be appointment television for BYU fans and to kick off college football. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And BYU schedule lays out like this. They got September 7th, Navy on Labor Day night, September 19th at Army. So first two games, again, we're probably assuming September 12th is going to be a bye. Kalani even hinted at that last week in a media availability, saying our first two games are Navy and Army, and we kind of like it that way, having back-to-back triple option teams.
And I like it that way too, Mitch,
Yeah.
because of with the pandemic, just gives you a little more time. You've just played a game. You've just traveled to the East Coast. What did we learn? What can we evaluate? I think it's incredibly wise to not have a game in week 2.
September 26th, they host Troy. That's the home opener. So if there's still some time, 1 month from today, for BYU ticketing, the athletic department to get it all sorted out in terms of the home situation for fans and media and all sorts of things in regards to home games in Provo. October 2nd, General Conference weekend, that's still open. They initially reported maybe Texas State could fall in there, but of course they're going to the 24th. The October 10th game is now UTSA. October 16th, Houston. October 24th, Texas State. And then November 21st, North Alabama. So,
and
again,
isn't Western Kentucky's in there too? Halloween night, right?
Yep. Halloween night. Thank you. October 31st, Western Kentucky as well. I knew I was missing one game there. So, yeah, BYU for the first 2 months of the season, they're loaded. It's now taking care of the month of November and maybe that General Conference weekend. But, yeah, BYU for the first 2 months, while everyone in the Pac-12, everyone in the Big Ten, they're sidelined, and the MAC, the Mountain West, they're sitting out. BYU is going to play, and hey, if they can make this thing work, it would be quite the accomplishment. But you know that BYU financially is going to put out the resources necessary to make this thing happen. And they feel like they kind of got a bubble already. It'll be interesting to see what happens this coming Monday when school starts in session. BYU is going to have remote learning both in class and online. But see if there's any COVID-19 spike cases, things like that then. But BYU feels pretty confident that this season's going to happen, and they're going to do everything necessary to make it work.
You know who I love this for too is the seniors who are not going to go to the NFL, because you put in all that work, even when the pandemic began, you and I thought this, there's no way there's no college football. It's like, all right, NBA shut down, but we'll have football, right? We'll have football. And these guys are training on their own with a little direction from the athletic program, but obviously not on campus, thinking there's going to be a football season. And then, it gets yanked from underneath you. I mean, that must have been a devastating blow for some of these seniors who probably know. I mean, everyone has dreams of the NFL, but the percentage of college athletes that go to the NFL, it's slim to none. A lot of these guys are not going to get that chance. So you're just looking forward to having that senior year. It's gone, and now it's been rebuilt, which has got to be awesome. As a fan, I'm constantly juggling. Yes, there's football back, and that's great. Oh, the opponent's not great. I'm leaning towards football's back, and that's great. But for the players, they don't even care who the opponent is. Having these games back on the schedule is great, and that makes me happy for them.
And I'm glad, too, that we're going to have an opportunity to see BYU, this improved program, which, again, I think it's improved. I think BYU, from a personnel standpoint, they're much older. They've been very vocal about that. This staff that could pay off dividends. This is the year that they've been building towards as a program, and it was kind of sad to think that it maybe wasn't going to happen there for a stretch, but now the schedule's being rebuilt. There's still going to be a few more games added. I would expect the sweet spot's probably 10. I would love to see 12. I think that would be remarkable, but it feels a little bit difficult to get 12 just because November scheduling's hard. Even without a pandemic, it's got to be even tougher during a pandemic when people want the flexibility to maybe delay games or postpone or whatever it may be. But, 10 great games, great. Let's sign it up. Let's see what BYU can do and make this thing happen. And I want to see Matt Bushman at his best. And what's interesting too, Matt, is that BYU, for those seniors you mentioned, they could have 2 senior years with the NCAA granting the waiver. They could have a year this year. And if they wanted to run it back one more time, they could. So BYU's got an opportunity where they're playing maybe 8 or 10 games or whatever it may be, 12. They might have this entire team back if they wanted, with the exception of a few guys. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think a guy like Matt Bushman, Kairos Tonga will probably take their talents to the NFL. But what's crazy to think, too? You can't help but, just think about the future. What if a guy like Zane Anderson comes back for a 7th year, which would be awesome. But think about the leg up they would have on next year's opponents if the Pac-12 can't play. I mean, Kyle Whittingham said, it's 50-50?
Yeah, his personal estimation said 50-50 at best.
50-50 at best. So if they don't play, and then their first, and then you get Utah, and you bring in a bunch of guys back who played a bunch of games. And I think it's also important to note this. From just a program perspective, having a significantly lighter schedule, I think, is going to tell us a lot about where this BYU program is, because they should win all their football games. And if they lose one game, I'm not going to kill them over that, because you have some talented teams on there, big road trips, things happen. If they go, let's say they schedule 10 games, Mitch, they go 9-1, then you can definitively say this program is improved. Kalani has them on the right track. They go 7-3 though, and they lose to Army, Navy, and BYU. Then you're really wondering, is the right group of people in charge to get this program to a place where you're winning 8 to 9 games a year? And so this will be, in a lot of ways, this season will be a better barometer than the previous seasons have been. I know that BYU likes to stack themselves up against Power 5 teams, Mitch, but now you get a chance to definitively say, we think we're a Power 5 team because we just killed all these G5 teams that we played.
Yeah, that's a great point, because honestly, I think it is a good barometer to see, year 10 of independence, how much better is BYU than a bunch of group of 5 programs. It's going to be an interesting study, because really that's what it is this year. I don't expect any Power 5 teams unless we see some miracle at the end. And I know you don't want Notre Dame. I would be happy for that.
I'm out.
This weekend, I'll take it. Give me Notre Dame and South Bend.
Mitch,
I think the 3 team could compete.
We already settled this last week on Cougar Sports Saturday. Shameless plug. You can hear that every Saturday from 12 to 3. The fans spoke on the text line. Nobody wants to play Notre Dame.
Oh, man, I would take that. I would take that. Even though I know BYU's owed a game in Provo. I want that. I want another game. I want one P5 somehow, some way. I know Holmo's doing everything he can to make it work. But
P5 teams don't want to play BYU.
I know. It's frustrating, because you would think that, the one thing I fear long-term with college football, kind of just, again, talking some college football news, BYU added 2 games if you came in late. They're up to 8 games total for the 2020 season. But I hope we don't get to a point, Matt, with this maybe new normal of college football, that these leagues then say, you know what, maybe this is what we need to do going forward. Just a bunch of 10-game conference schedules, not many non-conference games, because the non-conference matchups is truly what I think helps you define potentially a national champion. I think you can't really determine a national champ without some of those key non-conference games. And I hope that, I don't think it's going to go by the wayside, but I hope these leagues just kind of see this for what it is, this being a pandemic riddled season, and realize that, like, we still have a place for non-conference games in college football.
It's not sustainable. I mean, if you look at, if BYU were to trot these schedules out, they'd never have a sellout. And even the Florida States of the world, you're not selling out that first month of games against Samford and Jacksonville State. I love football as much as the next guy. Those games don't get me excited. They don't. But BYU and Florida State, I'm there. Yep. Florida State and Samford, I'm gonna mow my lawn and get some chores done.
It's been fun too on social media to see, in the college football pockets of social media, to see people saying, "Man, I've never been so hyped for a BYU Navy game." It's gonna be pretty cool.
We have our own KSL Sports guy, Tom Hackett. He's adopted BYU for the season.
Yeah, where's that on the story? Come on, Tom. We need that on the KSLSports.com. Yeah. Tom Hackett announced his allegiance to BYU. He goes from Fremont Street 5 years ago, where he's at a Vegas Bowl pep rally saying, Utah's world, BYU's living in it, to now he's a BYU fan.
That is incredible turnaround in 5 years. BYU's just living in another team's world, and now they're the only team in the state playing football.
I told Tom today, I was in the back of that Vegas Bowl pep rally, in the very back, because it was pretty crowded. There's a lot of BYU and Utah fans, and I was with another media outlet at that time, and I remember thinking to myself, I was like, man, this punter is so confident that they're just going to annihilate BYU. So I was like, okay, I'm now going to change my pick. I'm saying BYU is going to lose this game in Bronco's final matchup. Because I really thought, BYU is going to have that win one for Bronco the last game. They're going to send them out a winner, get that 100th win. But no, Tom's confidence at that podium, at that mic, at the Vegas Bowl pep rally made me realize, Utah's going to win. And they did. They were up 35-0. But now, hey, BYU won because now Tom Hackett is now a member of BYU fandom, and that maybe can officially end the losing streak. Hashtag.
It's already over. We figured that out a couple of weeks ago. There is no streak. It's a 0-0 post pandemic.
Hashtag 2-Ray Guy winner is coming to BYU now. Is that a hashtag that we can use? Anyway,
probably not. That's a little long. Last thing though, on a serious note, Mitch, I think his declaration, which is tongue-in-cheek, and it'll be fun to have him pay attention this year. I think it does touch on a larger point of interest amongst the country of people who want college football, and if BYU puts out a good, exciting product, they could be, dare I say, the darlings of college football.
It's a good point. We'll end it there. I think that's going to be interesting stuff, and we'll talk more about that coming up on Saturday on Cougar Sports Saturday on KSL News Radio from 12 to 3. You can check us out there. Follow us on Twitter at Mitch_Harper and at Baiamonte. Matt, big thanks to our friends at University Federal Credit Union for sponsoring this KSL Sports Front Page, which again is always available at 4 p.m. on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We'll catch you on Friday here on the KSL Sports Front Page, brought to you by University Federal Credit Union.